Hey everyone! DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics, has a cool mechanism called the zero level funnel. And that's where you take zero level characters, basically farmers and peasants, and you run them through adventures and you kill off a ton of them, but whoever pops out the other side and survives turns into your first level character. So I asked myself, can I do something similar in Savage Worlds? Have a zero level funnel mechanism that takes my character, a unskilled, untrained character, all the way through to being a wild card.
Savage World, one of the best games.
Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love your support, like, subscribes, all that good stuff. We are, after all, your friendly neighborhood YouTube channel for Savage Worlds, and we would enjoy your support. So what am I talking about today? Well, today I'm talking about zero-level funnels. Like I mentioned, Dungeon Crawl Classics is known for having this concept of the zero-level funnel, where you take basically characters with minimum hit points, no skills, no capabilities, and you run them through an adventure. And that adventure is deadly enough that it weeds out a ton of characters. And the idea is that you go through a lot of these sheets, and then at the end of it, you have a character that you're now going to turn into a first level character and give them the capability and skills. So I wanted to do something similar in Savage Worlds and figure out what would our zero level funnel look like for us in our Savage Worlds adventure. So one of the things we need to understand about what's important with the zero level funnel character is that, you know, they don't have a lot of skills. They're at the level of a peasant or a craftsman or somebody who has a job. And then third, they have to be able to be created fast, because the idea is that they're going to die fast. They're not going to survive this adventure very well. So you want the characters to be able to be created very quickly without a lot of fuss. So you can create a few of them to go on an adventure, or you can create them on the fly as you're going. So let's look at that. So what would we do to have a zero level kind of character for Savage Worlds? First thing, of course, is they're not a wild card. We're going to make them an extra. That's right. One hit, they're down. So, or one wound, they're down. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Make them an extra. Second thing is, I think the ability scores, we should not give them 5 points. We should probably only give them 3 points. And I would say let's randomly determine where those go quickly. So in our case, that's going to be 2d4s and 3d6s. And we'll just roll a d6 and we'll pick whatever the die roll on the d6 going down our character sheet. That'll be our d4. If we get lucky and we roll a 6, then we don't have to worry about that anymore. We will not have another d4, but that's simple. Just some d4s, d6 calls it done. Good. If you wanted to keep it even simpler, you could just make them d4s across the board, and then that's how your character starts. I think would be really cool is to have a hindrance that's kind of built into the character. Now this makes it a little longer to create a character, but you could just randomly determine it. In the core rulebooks, I think there's 57. So just roll a d100, and you know, as soon as you keep rolling it until you get in the range of where there are hindrances, and just pick one of those hindrances out based on that randomization. And there you go. You've got a hindrance. You know, hope it doesn't get one of those tough ones that are hard to play later. But that's part of the zero level funnel fun, is you're getting a character on the other side that's maybe not the optimal one you would have picked, but it's one that can be turned into a wild card adventure going forward. Then the next thing is only the standard skills at D4 the player has. So, you know, persuasion, stealth, notice, those sorts of things. Give them basically just those skills at D4. Next thing, 1 Benny. I'm going to give them because, you know, Savage Worlds, you could say don't give them any bennies, but in Savage Worlds, the Benny is so important that not to have at least one that the character can use, especially if you get somewhat attached to this particular person and you want to do that last ditch survival thing. Maybe a Benny is a good thing, and that might add some very interesting things to the game. I think it would. So I say give them a Benny just so that they have one to start with. would have no edges. Because obviously edges are for trained, skilled, good people, even background edges. But these are ordinary people. They don't have anything cool. I say no edges. If we give them an edge, that might give them an edge into survival, and that's not what we want. We want something that's going to be very hard to get them through the adventure, and for them to come out the other side is something impressive. But you could randomly roll and give them one background edge to start with, because you're being nice, and that would be an interesting thing as they do come out the other side to have that already. But that's completely on you. I say no edges. Then one thing that you don't normally do in Savage Worlds is have this idea of an occupation or a background that's usually defined as part of a backstory, and that background you try to weave into why you have certain edges or why you've taken certain hindrances, and that's where the occupation rolls in. In DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics, they have a really cool table called the occupation table, 1 to 100. You roll, and it's on, what is it, on page 23 of the book. I totally recommend that you go there, you look at it, and you roll on that table and find an occupation. And with that occupation in DCC includes some equipment they might have, which is really nothing, but it's interesting flavor. And it gives them something to base things on. So, you think you're doing something like, well, let's say the character's a tradesman or a trader. That doesn't add anything really specific skill to their mix, but it certainly can make it interesting when they're interacting with somebody for them to say, I want to take advantage of that skill, that I'm a trader, I should be able to do this. And that's part of the reason to have an occupation. Might give them a common knowledge role, or like I'll say in the next section, maybe there is a skill that's applicable. So that's one thing that you could look at as well, is if the occupation is sort of a skill that makes sense, like they're a natural healer, or herbalist or something. You might give them the healing skill at D4, just to represent that occupation that they have. I think that's probably going a bit too far, because now they've got another skill and they're a little more capable. But it would be an interesting thing to have a occupation that drives a certain skill that they may have coming into the game at a D4. So it might work. Why not? Give it a try. So what do we've got in our character, our random character? So we randomized a couple of we randomized their attributes. We gave them just the basic skills at D4. Maybe we gave them another skill based on an occupation. We made them an extra, so they're not a wild card. We gave them a Benny, just because Bennies are important, and so we want them to have a Benny. No edges, unless you think that's something you want to do. And then we defined an occupation, trying to take advantage of a table like DCC has. Maybe I'll put a table together myself and publish it, so that you guys have kind of an example of a random table that you can get an occupation off of. So that's it. Real simple. We should be able to make a character in no time flat, right? We're randomizing when there's no skills to do, which takes a long time to buy. There's no edges. They have to sit and think about what we want to do. Hindrances are randomly rolled, so we'll get one. We'll have random ability scores. Can't be much faster. And then if you take advantage of like a random table for your occupation, now you have an occupation, and we can go into our funnel. So we know Savage Worlds can be pretty deadly for extras. So you might want to see what happens about them going against a wild card at the end of your big adventure. See, there's always that old saying in Savage Worlds that at least I use this saying, that a peasant with a pitchfork can take out a wild card with the right rolls. Well, now here's your chance to see you're the folks with the pitchforks going against a wild card in the adventure. We'll see how everybody does. See who survives. So again, you got to bring a lot of them in, right? A whole bunch of people, 0 level characters. That's the whole point of the funnel, right? Starts out big, goes small. So why not give it a try? And then when they come out the other side, we've created a character in a kind of a unique way, and so we don't have to use the normal Savage Worlds rules. We can go and kind of tweak them. Like when they come out the other side, we give the player 2 extra ability points. So that gets them up to their normal 5, but they've already got kind of the baseline defined, and they have to decide now, am I going to shore up that D4, those couple of D4s? Am I going to kind of push this other ability score that's going to be more where I want to take my character? We would add hindrances to get all the points. So you randomly created one hindrance, and maybe it was a major, maybe it was a minor, but the characters can now take up to the maximum hindrances so they can get those maximum edges, and so that at maximum of 4 points. I think what would be kind of cool is, as players are looking to build out their character based on the funnel, maybe look at what skills the characters attempted or skill rolls they attempted. Now, anything they do other than the core skills are going to be unskilled challenges, right? So they're going to be, if they're going to say, hey, I'm going to try to throw this rock, it's going to be, well, that's a bad example because they can throw rocks. But if they can say, hey, I'm going to try to stab this guy and I don't have fighting, it's going to be an unskilled check, but I used the fighting skill. You might want to allow them to get a couple of extra skills at D4 based on something they did during the adventure. So like, for example, they did fight, maybe they get some fighting, or they tried to look at the ancient scroll trying to figure something out, maybe they get some research. Whatever it is, you might want to give them that just to kind of play off the fact that we did the 0 level funnel, which is kind of cool. Otherwise, give them the full 12 skill points for them to spend now that they're a true character. Let them take their edges as normal, and so when they come out of it, they're still a wild card Savage Worlds character like we expected, but now they've got a little tweak, a little flavor. You know, they had an occupation, they got a skill or two, they got a hindrance, kind of based on that character, that 0 level character that they started with. So that's what I think. So I think, you know, give them the skill points to make their attributes the highest they need to. Let them build out their hindrances like normal. Give them a couple skills, 3 skills based on things that they used in the adventure as unskilled rolls then, but now make them a skill. Give them their normal points for skills. Let them take their edges as normal. So in the end of the day, they have a classic wild card Savage Worlds character with just a little more flavor. So that's what I'm thinking. Let's do a 0 level funnel. Why not? That's going to be fun. Especially with Savage Worlds, people say is swingy. There's going to be some pretty huzzah moments where this 0 level extra character that you're playing does something fantastic and gets out of the adventure to become a true wildcard adventurer. Once again, I'm Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff, and we will talk to you later. Bye.
Savage World, one of the best games today. Savage World, Benny enhance my play. Savage World, different setting any day.